So I've been doing a lot of thinking about Overwatch 2's story lately, or lack thereof, and I feel like it never is going to realize its full potential, and that kind of isn't sitting right with me. It's kind of bothering me, and the story missions that we did get have been out long enough to where we've simmered on them. We've all got our thoughts, our feelings, and I feel like I can approach this now with a clearer mind. So I, random dude on the internet with absolutely no writing credentials under his belt, am going to try to take a look at what we've got and try to see if we can make something out of it. You know, like, I feel like there's a lot of potential in this world for something truly great, but not only has it not been realized since 2016, I don't really know if it's ever going to. So maybe we together can kind of build something out of it. So my plan here is to sort of take what we already have and supplement it with more material. We're going to have to be doing a lot of supplementing, mind you, but I don't want to like get in the way of the core of what it is. We can't change its identity, but we have to add more depth to what's there. So like, here are some examples of the things that we can't change. Like, honestly, it's these two most important things. Overwatch is still an international task force created to combat the Omnic crisis, for one. But then also, it's still disbanded after scandals and all that other shit, okay? So those are like two important bits as to what makes the world of Overwatch the world of Overwatch, all right? Those core things are still intact. So first things first, the cast is huge, and we're going to need to establish a main character, someone that we can kind of focus on so that it's not just a jumbled mess. And there are a bunch of candidates that could work. So first of all, there's Winston. I think he'd be a good choice because he's essentially the main character of the original game in 2016. He's the guy whose actions propel the plot forward. He was the one who did the recall for Overwatch to get back together. So he is a possible choice. However, though, I think we can do better. He would be good, but I don't think he'd be the absolute best. I have someone else in mind. And for the sake of keeping things interesting, I'll explain why it won't be some other characters. Like the Shimada brothers. They're fan favorites. Everyone likes Genji. Everyone likes Hanzo, story-wise. And they are cool. But I don't think that they have main character potential. At least insofar as the plot of Overwatch goes. You know what I mean? Like, their story's cool, but they would be good supporting characters. Their story is not the story of Overwatch. They're just cool in and of themselves. So not them. And this kind of brings me to Sojourn, because she's new for Overwatch 2, obviously. And the story missions that we did get seem to want the characters to want her to be the leader of Overwatch. Like, because I know Winston and Cassidy were kind of just gassing her up, acting like she is the best bet because Soldier 76 isn't available. And I guess maybe to them that makes sense. But I don't think that would be satisfying as a viewer, because Sojourn's just too new, for one. And not to mention, she kind of sold Overwatch out. Like, she testified against them. That's not computing for me. There are other characters I think better suited for this. And so that brings me to Soldier 76. Obviously, he would be a good choice, but he's like long gone at this point. Like, he's not affiliated 100% with Overwatch anymore. And for that reason, I think he can't be the main character either. Like, he'd be off doing his own shit. And then there's also Tracer, the last obvious option, because she's the poster girl of the whole franchise. You know, like, her face is synonymous with the brand. She's the one that, like, before I even knew what the game was when the beta came out, I was like, oh yeah, that person, you know, over there. I'm a Tracer main, by the way. So that's how you know I'm not being biased. That's my main, and I still don't think she should be the main character. But no, alright, enough fucking around. Who I actually think should be the main character is none other than the all-American hero, Cole Cassidy. So what I'm going to do is I've arranged a sort of pseudo outline. It's not super in-depth. It's just enough for this very quick talky video that I'm doing here. So I'm going to go through this little outline with you, and hopefully that speaks for itself as to why he should be the main character. So let's just get right into it. So, okay, again, to reiterate, because I cannot stress this enough, we cannot take away the core identity, all right? Overwatch is still a disgraced organization. Winston still initiates the recall, just like in 2016. And Null Sector is still a very real antagonistic threat, okay? These things are still the case. So we're going to have two different, like, timelines here. One in the modern time where Overwatch is disgraced, and they're trying to get it back together. But then also the second timeline is going to be them in the past when Overwatch was still a thing. Maybe towards the end, but like definitely more alive. And so the modern plot is going to be mostly the same, like as we see it start to play out in the story missions that we got, but the past is where a lot of the big and interesting changes happen. So we're going to delve into Cassidy's past, when he was in Blackwatch, that's important, and when he was in the Deadlock Gang. And those are going to sort of inform his character and who he is in the modern day. And we're also going to use that to flesh out the relationship between him and Ash and show him leaving the Deadlock Gang and how that impacts her. Because I feel like there's a lot of juicy interpersonal tidbits there in his relationship with Ash that the game in the cinematics and stuff doesn't go deep enough into. Like, they give you the surface level sort of conflict between them, like they used to mean a lot to each other, but I really want to dig deep into that because I feel like that humanity is what's going to endear us more to Cassidy and keep us watching. So when all the action cool shit's happening, we give a fuck about this guy. You know, that's what's going to keep us there. And so it shows him in Blackwatch, and he's in his little squad with Moira, Reaper, and Genji, and they're fighting Null Sector forces. And at this point, that's like, they're not an invasion level threat. It's not like save the entire world level stakes yet, and Cassidy still has both of his arms. And so during this mission, they run into Null Sector's leader, who is Ramatra. And then shit starts to get real, you know? Because at this point, Null Sector hasn't gathered the forces to be able to launch a full-scale invasion of Earth yet, but they're still, like, quite powerful in their own right, and Ramatra is still the villain. We're going to set him up as the villain because that kind of just seems naturally where the game's going anyway. Like, I know you've got Doomfist, and I know you've got, like, other Talon operatives, but they seem like they would be a good side antagonistic force. Not unimportant, but just not as earth-shatteringly important as, like, Ramatra and Null Sector. Because I feel like that's where the real money is, you know? And this way, we'll be able to flesh out the character of Ramatra, at least insofar as it gives our main character, Cassidy, the stakes to go up against him, and it's going to be emotionally satisfying when we see them in the final battle. Like, it's not going to be a 1v1. He would fucking lose. Cassidy would lose. I'm sorry, if any Cassidy mains out there, he would lose in a 1v1 against Ramatra, but, like, still, the personal and philosophical battle will be fought between those two, you know? And so I haven't thought fully through this flashback fight yet insofar as the choreography and all that, but you know, they get into a final conflict with Ramatra and his goons, and during this conflict at some point Reaper and Moira just leave Cassidy and Genji hanging, all right? Because we know that Genji, at least according to in-game dialogue, considers Cassidy like a brother, so clearly their bond has been forged through service and their history together and all that shit. And yeah, so it'll create some bad blood between the Overwatch operatives and the Talon operatives, but then also, you know, endear Genji and Cassidy together. That way they have that bond. And they're going to go through it together, and they're going to have to basically fight off Ramatra and his forces by themselves. And so during this all is lost moment where they're completely overwhelmed and outnumbered, Genji's going to get captured by Ramatra. And so right before, you know, he gets grabbed or whatever, like Cassidy jumps in the way and Ramatra actually grabs Cassidy instead of Genji, and like that's how he loses his arm. So we see him lose his arm in a fight with Ramatra, saving Genji. And that way, one, it answers the question of how Cassidy loses his arm, but then also two, it makes it personal. So yeah, we want to see this Ramatra guy get defeated, and we want Cassidy to at least be a big part in doing it. You know what I mean? And like in this last moment, you know, Genji whips out the Dragon Blade, and you know, because you got to do cool shit. And like as he's tearing through some robots and Ramatra's putting up a really big fight, then like Overwatch comes in, you know, like maybe there's a distress signal or some shit, I don't know, but like they get there on the scene. The main body of Overwatch gets there, pulls their agents out, realize that Moira and Reaper are gone, and you know, that's what starts all the fuckery. And so after seeing this flashback, we have a little more context as to who Cassidy is, how he got that way, and then we can continue on the plot of them trying to find a new leader for Overwatch. And so throughout the course of the present day story, we kind of see Cassidy become a leader in his own right. You know, maybe it is Winston at first because he's getting the band back together. Maybe Cassidy tries to deflect and try to build Sojourn up at this as this leader. But it starts to become clear after a while that it's actually just meant to be Cassidy. Because he's the guy that came from a troubled past. He's edgy, but he's also been through shit. Not only has he been maimed in battle, but also like he's been on the other side of the law. He understands how criminals and terrorists and evildoers think. And he also understands how someone could get that low, but then the value of then turning that around. So he's well-rounded. He's been around the block. And also, according to like in-game dialogue, or at least this is how I'm interpreting it, maybe I'm wrong, but if you have Cassidy and Soldier 76 on the same team, there is some dialogue that like heavily implies that Soldier 76 was grooming Cassidy for leadership, like he was supposed to be the one to lead the new generation of agents into the future, and that he failed, or he let Soldier 76 down in some way. And I think that that's really cool. So then maybe at some point in the midpoint, we kind of come across Soldier 76 while he's out doing vigilante shit. And then like we get this really cool character moment between like him and Cassidy where he kind of not really pours his heart out, but like in his stern, very Clint Eastwoody way is like, you know, you were meant to be the guy. Like you were meant to do things right. And maybe there's some personal stake where Soldier kind of feels like he fucked up and maybe he shouldn't have done what he did. Maybe he's gone too far, and maybe Cassidy was supposed to be his vicarious way of making that right for himself. And so they both kind of have this stake in it. And then we can watch Cassidy become that rugged outlaw who maybe doesn't really see the value in fighting for the greater good at first, but we see him mature and grow into like a more altruistic guy, but with his same cool edge that he's always had, you know? And so, obviously, on the villain side of things, too, we'd be fleshing out Ramatra, because at least based on the very shallow introductions to these characters that we get in the game and the cinematics, Ramatra has the makings of, like, a god-tier villain, you know, in terms of his motivation. Because, I mean, he's not really wrong, you know? Like, his people have been suffering at the hands of humanity for generations. And so, it's like, he is the Magneto to Zenyatta's Professor Xavier. So he's got some valuable philosophy on his end. He's just taken it too far, you know? Like he's lashing out violently, which is just further solidifying humanity's view of him and his people. And I think that that's a really interesting nugget. And we can kind of flesh him out and maybe, you know, have Zenyatta as a supporting character to sort of make that more emotionally resonant. But it's to the point where when we see our character Cassidy have to go up against Ramatra at the end, it's not just a battle of awesome all-American cowboy versus big robot boy. It's sort of like this battle of ideologies. Like, Cassidy's fighting for the greater good, and he believes that he needs to save humanity from this guy, but at the same time, it will ask the question, like, is humanity the one that needs saving? Well, according to Ramatra, it's the opposite. It would be the Omnics. And so it would kind of create this dynamic where you're like, well, I want Cassidy to win because I know he's our main character, but I don't want that to mean that Ramatra has to lose. And so there's that cool nugget there. And I feel like Blizzard did a really good job of creating the idea of a very sympathetic villain. You know, I just wish we could get like an anime or something. But well, I digress. I could be here all fucking day if I'm gonna talk about how much I want an Overwatch anime, but that's not gonna help. We gotta do something about this now. One thing I would also want is this sort of subplot between Cassidy and Ash, like I sort of touched on before, and how that was going to complicate him and his current goals. Like, that'll be a piece of his old life, always beckoning him back. And we can see Cassidy progress and regress sort of based on these interactions with her and, like, thoughts of the past and stuff. And we get to see a more vulnerable side of both him and Ash. And we can kind of find out that maybe, you know, she's tough. She's very stern. She's very aggressive, very violent, like we saw in the cinematic. But there's, like, more reason to it. Maybe she really fucking trusted Cassidy. Maybe she really felt something for him, be it platonic or romantic. And him leaving wasn't just like, oh boy, I don't have my best friend or my boyfriend or whoever anymore. It's like, he got me into this life. He helped me become who I am. And if he's too good for this life, or if he's going out and bettering himself, what does that say about me? Am I a loser for being here? Or did I make the wrong choice, or what? And so, like, that sort of insecurity can kind of explode within her and create this conflict. Maybe that's where the anger comes from in her, you know, as it pertains to her relationship with him. Because I don't think we can deny, like, in that cinematic where she's on like her little motorcycle thing, like when she gets defeated and like hogtied, we see Cassidy take her motorcycle, and there is a picture of the both of them together that she keeps in her gauge cluster. And I'm just like, well, you don't fucking do that if the person in the picture didn't mean a lot to you, because from her perspective, Cassidy probably abandoned her, and that probably really fucking sucked. And I'm not saying that that justifies her being a gang leader, you know, but it's like that humanizes her, and I feel that there's really something there. And it's just sort of this thing where it's like, I trusted you, you were the person who got me into this life, and without you I don't really know what I'm doing. And I just think that that'd be really cool, and you know, I think that that could really add some seasoning on this proverbial chicken. Jesus. Because like, I feel that Ash's hatred for Cassidy is not real. Like, not that it's not real, but it comes from a place of like, I loved you. And it's just unresolved. So it's like, she hates him. She wants to hate him. But it's because she doesn't actually hate him. It's because she kind of loves him a little. You know what I mean? Like, hatred doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It came from somewhere else. All right? And I think that that could be some really good shit. I'm just saying. So yeah, I mean, as we're going along this little narrative journey, it's less an outline and more so just a random hodgepodge of ideas. It's like, fucking sue me. I'm not a screenwriter. That's not my job. But like, I really think that there's something cool there. I really do. And you know, maybe with the acquisition from Microsoft, maybe the narrative team will actually have a little more freedom, because I don't want to blame them. I don't think this is their fault. Like, I'm sure that the writers for like the lore and the world and the characters of this game would absolutely love to further expand. I mean, you don't just become a writer because that job was available. It's not like applying to work at an outlet store. It's like you get into it because you like it. You have a passion for storytelling. And, you know, clearly based on what we've got, the world we've got, the characters we've got, they clearly love what they do and they're good at it. So I don't want to make this seem like I'm just shitting. There are so many things that go into this. Usually, I don't know, maybe corporate interference, I don't know. But maybe with the acquisition on Microsoft's part, they will be able to dive a little deeper. They can maybe just be left alone to do whatever the fuck they want. Or maybe we'll just never get more story. Ever. Maybe it'll be drip fed to us over the next like decade, and then we just won't care anymore. But whatever happens, I say these things because I, like many of you, are just very passionate about this world. I've spent countless hours in it. As I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm sitting above a very bright orange Tracer mouse pad. I play the game a lot. Terrible at it, but I play it a lot. And I just really care about the people in it. Part of why I picked Tracer to be my main is because I think she's cool conceptually. She's like the personality of Spider-Man with the powers of fucking a time god. I don't know. It's cool. It's cool, man. And this world is cool, and I want to see it thrive. So I don't know. What do you guys think? What was my pseudo outline based? Was it cringe? I don't know. Let me know in the comments, and let me know what you would like to see in an Overwatch video or Overwatch series or book, maybe a novelization. Could go anywhere. There's so many possibilities, and I guess that's the point. But with all that said, I'll see y'all later.